The moonflower permeated in along the gaps of the thatched roof like frost, and cast on the tattered cotton wool, sprinkling a silver radiance. The walls made of adobe bricks were empty, and there were pits and pits everywhere. Su Zishuang's first glance when she woke up, she saw such a scene. "What's the matter? I was obviously taking a nap, how did I come to such a place? Are you dreaming? Or have you been kidnapped?" Just as these thoughts were surging in Su Zishuang's mind, all of a sudden, pictures were flashing continuously in his soul like a tide. Su Zishuang's soul was shocked suddenly, so that his headache was splitting, his hands were caught on the broken cotton wool, sweat seeping out. It took a long time for Su Zishuang to really wake up, and her face became extremely weird. Zai Linger lost his father at the age of 3, and his mother at the age of 5, and his brother Zai Xian was on each other for life. 3 years ago, he was favored by the Wang family, a big family in the village, and wanted to force him to become the son-in-law of Wang's stupid son. Hit his head on the goalpost, and then fell into a coma. Within 3 years, his brother Zixuan sought medical treatment and exhausted his wealth, but he was unable to wake up Zai Linger. 3 years later, Zai Linger suddenly woke up. Come! Flipping the memory in her mind, Su Zishuang was already certain that her own soul had swallowed the soul of Zai Linger, in other words, she had become Zai Linger. This kind of thing that came to another world after a nap is tragic enough. But life is like a coffee table, full of tableware and cups. What's more interesting is that from Zai Linger's experience, this is clearly a well-known cannon fodder female part in a cultivator Mary Su Wen that Su Zishuang is familiar with. Before taking a nap, Su Zishuang just saw that the latest chapter gave Zai Linger a cannon fodder. As a result, she posted a fierce scolding of the author and complained about Zai Linger. Who would have thought that if he overslept, he would become Zai Linger? Could it be that this is the big vicious curse from the author? Su Zishuang frowned and sat up from the bed. She clearly felt her body's weakness. She had been in bed for 3 years and had not woken up. Even though her brother Zixuan tried his best to disperse her wealth, she could barely guarantee that Zai Linger would not die. Forget it, there is no precious medicine to nourish, and the body does not shrink, it is a fluke. After Su Zishuang's soul was possessed, Zai Linger was reborn, but when she thought of Zai Linger's tragic fate in the future, Su Zishuang suddenly felt a chill in her heart. In the book, Zai Linger struggles desperately in the vortex of fate, and finally turns into a dead bone. Now that he has become Zai Linger, can he change his future destiny? Don't talk about the future tribulations, just talk about the upcoming crisis, and you may not be able to cope with it. According to the development of the plot, after Zai Linger woke up, some people went to Wang's house to inform the news, and then the Wang family sent people to catch Zai Linger to be the daughter-in-law of the silly son to pass on the family. In order to protect Zai Linger, her brother Zixuan blocked those things alone. The fierce family member was beaten to death. But Zai Linger escaped for a while, was still arrested, and was to marry Wang Jia's silly son, and was raped by the silly son that night. When the upcoming story in the memory flowed through his mind, Su Zishuang's body became cold, and his heart seemed to have fallen into the ice. It's really a pitfall, such an unlucky cannon fodder female partner, want to change the fate, it is extremely difficult, did I unfortunately choose the mode? Su Zishuang's mind turned with thoughts, but for a while, it was difficult to meditate, and his heart was numb. Linger, I'm back. A familiar tired voice came from outside the yard. This familiar feeling came from Zai Linger's memories and emotions. It was her brother Zai Xian who was talking outside. For 3 years, every night when Zai Xian came home from the outside, he habitually called Linger, but no one had ever responded to him. Brother! The emotion from Zai Linger caused Su Zishuang to shout subconsciously. The people standing outside couldn't help but shook. Through the window lattice, a pale little face came into his eyes. The axe in Zai Xian's hand couldn't help falling to the ground, and tears burst into his eyes on his dark face. Originally working outside, Ziai Xian's body has been very exhausted, but at this moment, his body seems to be full of endless power. He walked over quickly, pushed open the door hard, and saw a skinny little girl with big clear eyes looking over. A warm current gushed out of Ziai Xian's body, and a man with iron bones, tears could not stop streaming down at this moment. Linger, are you really awake? You have slept for so many years, but you have scared my brother. Ziai Xian stretched out his hand and wiped his tears, mud all over his face. Su Zishuang only felt extremely sorrow and grief in her heart. When she saw this episode in the book, she sighed with emotion, but after she had experienced it personally and accepted the emotions that belonged to Ziai Linger, she knew that there was a brother who cared about herself. What a good thing! For many years, Ziai Linger and Ziai Xian have been each other's only relatives. This emotion of struggling to depend on each other in poverty is the most precious thing. Brother! Su Zishuang yelled softly, her hands were tight, her nails were almost pinched into the flesh, but her heart was secretly determined not to let Zixuan die. Even according to the plot, Zixuan would definitely do it. To die, she also has to reverse the plot. If you want to rewrite the fate of being a cannon fodder in the future, changing Zixuan's mortal fate is the first step. Linger, your body is still weak, lie down quickly, and wait for brother to make mushroom soup for you. A smile appeared on Ziai Xian's face. At this moment, this man was not handsome or tall, his whole body wearing coarse cloth clothes with patches, and the muddy water everywhere, suddenly became extremely tall in Su Zishuang's mind. Ziai Xian walked out the door quickly, and then entered the small kitchen next to it. The kitchen was empty, and the only thing that could make up was the mushrooms that Ziai Xian had picked from the outside. Ziai Xian didn't know which mushrooms were poisonous and which ones were not. He just tasted some of them after seeing them, and after he was sure he was okay, he brought them back to Ziai Linger to eat. Su Zishuang leaned against the wall, panting slightly, and took a look at the room. The room is really empty. Except for a few ordinary wooden chairs and a lame wooden table, there is no other furniture. The ground is uneven loess. Although it is very poor, the inside of the room it's neatly packed. Su Zishuang closed her eyes lightly, she felt hunger in her belly, and her body was weak. Although the soul possessed the body to rekindle the body, she had been in bed for a long time and could not recover quickly in a short time. After a while, Zixuan made fresh mushroom soup and brought it from the small kitchen. Brother, just put it on the table, I'll do it myself. Su Zishuang opened his eyes when Ziai Xian wanted to come over and feed himself. Your body is still very weak. Let me come. I have been waiting for my brother for the past 2 years. I have become accustomed to it. Ziai Xian's dark face had a simple smile, and then he brought the mushroom soup and took a bite. Feed Su Zishuang and drink it. This wild mushroom is the most nourishing. After drinking a large bowl, Su Zishuang felt his body warm and his strength recovered a lot. It's so pitiful, my sister really woke up. Ziai Xian stretched out his hand and wiped his tears, like a little daughter-in-law. God didn't accept me, let me return to the world. Therefore, in the future, our family will be able to live a good life. Su Zishuang's eyes flashed with bright light. Of course. Ziai Xian picked up the empty bowl and said with a smile, Brother, go to Aunt Yang's house and ask for some eggs. Aunt Yang. Su Zishuang touched his memory, his face couldn't help but change. Aunt Yang lives not far away. She is pretty good to the Ziai family on weekdays. Ziai Xian borrows someone from her house, or borrows something when there is no rice or food. Aunt Yang doesn't say anything else. With other people nearby being estranged from Zixuan, it was already very rare. But Su Zishuang knew that in the original book, Aunt Yang was a nail arranged by the Wang family in the Ziai family. Usually, she applied some small favors to gain Ziai Xian's trust. When Ziai Linger woke up, Aunt Yang immediately went to Wang's house to inform her. In fact, the Wang family didn't expect Zi Linger to wake up at the beginning, but just habitually explained Aunt Yang a few words. However, Aunt Yang's disposition is that she dislikes the poor and loves the rich, and she wants to have a relationship with the Wang family, so she really took the things the Wang family ordered casually in mind. It was precisely because of Aunt Yang's whistleblower that the Wang family quickly found out, and then sent someone over. Su Zishuang clenched her fingers and her lips were slightly white. When she thought of the plot that might happen next, her heartbeat accelerated involuntarily. "Brother, do you believe me?" Su Zishuang bit his lip and said sternly. "How can I not believe your words?" Zai Xian had a petting smile on his face. "Aunt Yang is not a good person, don't tell me about my waking up." Su Zishuang's voice was tense. Zai Xian was stunned, and smiled, "I believe you, then I won't go to Aunt Yang's house to borrow eggs. Linger, don't worry, I won't tell anyone about you wake up." Su Zishuang sighed secretly. Looking at Zai Xian's expression, he knew that he didn't really believe that Aunt Yang was not a good person. It's just that Zai Xian's love for Zai Linger shouldn't be violated. "Brother, this matter can't be disclosed, so as not to let the people of the Wang family know it. If there are so many people, the neighbors may leak it to the Wang family." Su Zishuang thought for a while and said in a different way. Zai Xian's expression became stern. He would never forget what happened 2 years ago, the fierceness of the Wang family, he had personally experienced it. Therefore, he really paid attention to what his sister Zai Linger said from the heart. No matter what kind of person Aunt Yang is, just in case, she can't tell this matter out. Update time 2013102116:12:25 words, 2222 anyway, I have nowhere to go. Although in the end I seek a ray of life according to the plot, at least my brother Zixuan was not beaten to death in front of me, which means that some of the details of the plot in the book were lost. Changed. If you jump down and fall to death, you can only accept your fate. Who would let the author face such a difficult situation for me? It's pretty good to be here. Su Zishuang cast an indifferent look at Wang Zifeng, then turned around and jumped out of the cliff. The wind screamed in his ears, and there was an exclamation sound from above, but everything had nothing to do with Su Zishuang. Is it because I came here to prove that human falling from a cliff conforms to the law of free fall motion? As the falling speed accelerated, and blood rushed into his mind, Su Zishuang couldn't help thinking about it. I originally thought that after falling off the cliff, I would be very scared, but I was truly falling in the air, but my heart was extremely calm, just like people fear death. What fears is not death itself, but the unknown caused by death. After falling for a while, Su Zishuang passed out into a coma, and many people with poor physical fitness, after falling from the cliff, had not waited to fall to the ground, their internal organs broke and died in midair. Su Zishuang is also in a very dangerous state. I don't know how long it has passed, Su Zishuang felt that his face was wet, as if there was dew flowing along the corner of his mouth. Suddenly, Su Zishuang's heart was startled and he woke up. Su Zishuang's first feeling when she woke up was the softness under her body, like a pile of cotton. Opening his eyes, Su Zishuang got up, his eyes swept, and a trace of joy filled his heart. The white clouds and mist in front of me are like being in a fairyland, and Su Zishuang is sitting in a nest about 3 meters in diameter. There are many snow-white haystacks under him, soft, like cotton. General. This nest is in the middle of the cliff, not up or down, completely in midair. Sure enough, it is the same as the plot in the book. This is a nest made by monsters, but for some reason, the monsters disappeared, leaving only an empty nest, and the Zi Linger in the book fell here to pick it up. Returned alive, and thus embarked on the fate of the cannon fodder female partner. Su Zishuang used Zi Linger's original plot now, and also landed on the lair, so as long as he waited patiently, he could be saved. But in this way, didn't he follow Zi Linger's original trajectory? It's really the cup of the cup, the evil author, why is it so difficult to change your destiny? Su Zishuang's expression suddenly changed. In the original plot, Zai Linger was saved 5 days after she landed in the lair, but now she fell 3 days in advance. So, isn't she going to stay in this lair for 8 days? Reaching out, Su Zishuang breathed a sigh of relief, and the package tied to his back was still there, containing some cakes and a pot of water, saving some, and he should not die of starvation after barely 8 days. Su Zishuang sat in the soft lair and looked at herself, but she felt like a beggar, with blood on her palms. The wound was fierce and painful, and her torn clothes were cut in many places by the thorns on the hillside. I don't know what will happen to my brother Zixuan. Although Su Zishuang was a little worried, she couldn't do anything. This feeling of being manipulated by fate is very bad. But ideas and reality are often two disjoint parallel lines, with a big gap. Su Zishuang didn't shout unrealistic slogans like "I'm going against the sky" in his heart, but just sat quietly so that his physical strength would not be consumed quickly. For a long time, Su Zishuang spent the rest of her fainting sleep, but when she turned over in the nest the next morning, she felt that there was a hard object under her body, which was very uncomfortable. Reaching out, Su Zishuang grabbed a hard object from a pile of cotton-like grass and brought it to his side. Su Zishuang took a closer look, but found that it was a small thumb-like bell with many green rust spots on it. Perhaps because of the internal rust, it could not make a sound when it was shaken. There is a light blue rope on the top of the bell, which can be tied to the wrist and used as a bracelet. It's a tattered thing again. I thought it was a special opportunity to get a magic weapon. Disappointment. However, Su Zishuang did not throw it away, because there was a row of small star reliefs on the side of the bell. There were 9 colors in total, namely black, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, and white, which looked a bit delicate. Just treat it as a lucky star. I hope to wait for the opportunity in the book in 7 or 8 days. If I don't come for half a month, I will starve to death and become a dead bone. Su Zishuang tied the bell to his wrist. Go up, and then look up at the white mist. The fog in front changed all kinds of weird shapes. Su Zishuang's eyes were lost, but in his heart he thought of the situation under the deep valley. According to the book, it's not dangerous to be on the edge of the deep valley, but there is a secret hidden in the deepest part of the deep valley. Unfortunately, the author has not filled the hole before Su Zishuang crossed into the book world, so Su Zishuang also had no way of knowing what kind of secret was hidden in the deepest place. The author of that book likes to let the female protagonist, who appears to be Mary Su Ziobeiwa's black heart, to kill the enemy. I remember that Su Zishuang once posted to remind the author, but after waiting for 2 days, the author went online and replied, "Yes? Did I dig that pit? Nemas, I forgot what I wrote. What kind of memory is this?" Therefore, there are quite a lot of cheating plots in that book. No wonder the book review area is full of curses. However, at this time Su Zishuang was tearful of confession, and if he could go back, he would never scold the author again. After reading the book, he would not question any plots of cheating. It's really a bad thing to post a curse. Who would have thought that the author had a super invincible curse skill? This world is real, it is definitely not an illusion or a dream, so Su Zishuang has a bit of doubt deep in her heart. How did this world come into being? Su Zishuang suddenly remembered the female pig's feet in the book. That Marie Su Ziobeiwa was a miscellaneous maid of the cultivation family at first. After she was born, she died of her father and mother. She had a miserable life than Zai Linger, but once she missed and broke an antique and was beaten to death by her master. The fate has changed. Because there is a black-bellied Nyucha agent who is proficient in poisons, medicine, and fighting, has travelled from modern times to the soul of that maid. From then on, Mary Su Ziobeiwa has become her surface disguise, but the bones are full of fierceness and black belly. Since embarking on the road of cultivating immortals, the level has soared since then, as if it was opened all the way, just like using a plugin when playing online games. It's better not to be an enemy of the female pig's feet that is so fierce as to hang Neoshizan. Don't meet with it. Anyway, the world is so wide, as long as you try to avoid some coincidences, there is still a chance not to fight against the female pig's feet. If there is no accident, the heroine's name is Nangang Yan Xi. Su Zishuang thought to himself. Update time 2013102218:12:16 words, 2029. Su Zishuang thought for a while, but couldn't feel the fatigue and sleepiness of his body, and gradually fell asleep again. In his sleep, Su Zishuang faintly felt something sharp pierced on his wrist, but it just seemed to be pinched by an ant, so after a moment of tingling, he didn't feel any more. When she woke up again, Su Zishuang opened her eyes and saw a faint orange light. It was already night, and the orange light came from Su Zishuang's wrist. The star relief on the bell actually lights up? What does this mean? The fog on Su Zishuang's head was just to see the orange star in the row of embossed stars, which was more obvious when set against the dark night. Suddenly, an unknown object fell from the air and hit Su Zishuang on the head. Su Zishuang stretched out his hand and hurried to the side, grabbed the white grass in the nest and wiped the top of his head vigorously. It's really bad luck. Su Zishuang sighed. Because what fell on Su Zishuang's head was the excrement of a certain kind of bird, and this filthy thing fell on top of her head in a straightforward manner. I had to say that this was too bad luck. While wiping the top of his head, Su Zishuang saw that the orange light on his wrist disappeared and the green stars lit up. Su Zishuang had a heartache, but he thought of something unexpectedly. Aren't these stars just ordinary decorations? They are some kind of symptom when they light up. With this idea, Su Zishuang instinctively wanted to verify it. Let's see if we can make the light disappear. The way Su Zishuang thought of was to mute in her heart, disappear, disappear. And then focused her thoughts on the bell on her wrist. Soon, the green stars really dimmed. Appeared. Su Zishuang focused his thoughts again. The light flickered a few times, and the green stars lit up again. Su Zishuang's eyes, it seems that the bell she got is very unusual. For the next few days, Su Zishuang has been testing the bells in his hands for stars, and basically came to a more reliable conclusion. The stars on the bell are directly related to air luck. There are 9 colors of black, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, and white, and air luck is gradually increasing. In other words, when the black stars shine, it means that the luck is extremely bad, and if the white stars shine, the luck is against the sky. Under normal circumstances, air luck is hovering in the 3 colors of yellow, green, and blue, which also represents the middle meaning of good or bad. When you have bad luck, you can't do things smoothly, but if you have good luck, it means you're more likely to succeed in doing things. If I had obtained such a bell that could test my luck in the past, wouldn't I be able to buy a lottery ticket? Su Zishuang blinked. Such a bell, if it can be used in an appropriate place, is very likely to have a huge impact. Such an unlucky cannon fodder female partner finally got an inconspicuous golden finger. It seems that there is still some welfare. This time, Su Zishuang thanked God. In the next few days, Su Zishuang changed the color of the stars on the bell to avoid bad luck. After careful calculation, a total of 5 unidentified excrement attacks were resolved, 3 stone impacts, and 3 ordinary mountain fruits were obtained, which is considered brilliant. However, with the passage of time, the biscuits and water prepared in the package have almost been consumed. There is no sky or ground in this nest. It is impossible to satisfy your hunger after only a few bites of 3 shankuo. So, just a few days later, Su Zishuang hungry chest and back, lying in the nest, unable to even lift a finger. If 2 or 3 days pass, Su Zishuang can be sure that he will be completely reimbursed. When will the life-saving guy come? Su Zishuang's eyes were a little blurry, and the golden star appeared in front of his hungry eyes. Although this is the world where immortal cultivators fly into the sky and escape the earth, as a naked little girl, she is so small and inconspicuous, like a tiny ant, and ordinary hunger can kill her. Su Zishuang concentrated on looking at her wrist from time to time. What she is looking forward to most now is the arrival of good luck, but what she hopes most has never appeared. Instead, on the bell on the wrist, the crimson light slowly light up. Su Zishuang's heart was shocked, and the red star was bright. This was already the bad luck second only to the black star. Wouldn't it be so unlucky? There is no mention of the plot in the book. Just like the bell of luck that Su Zishuang got, and the experience of the past few days, there is nothing in the book. After all, Zai Linger is just a cannon fodder female partner. If you can put it up a bit, it is already a lot of scenes. In the original work, it is more about how the heroine Nangang Yangzi practices the eye-catching enemies, and has leisure flirting with all kinds of beautiful guys at the time. Zai Linger's past experience is only explained in simple descriptive words, so there is a large blank space. But this is a real world. The book doesn't say how hungry Zai Linger is or what thoughts he has in his heart, but in reality Su Zishuang has encountered various things. This is a detailed problem that has not been mentioned in the book. Su Zishuang would have fallen into the lair a few days earlier than Zai Linger in the book, so it was possible to encounter anything. Seeing that the air luck at this time was scarlet red, very poor, even if Su Zishuang had no strength anymore, she hurriedly shrank her body and pressed it towards the cliff wall. In this high altitude, the most common danger is that some of the rocks above may be rolled down. After the free fall motion, the small rocks may also be very lethal. But then Su Zishuang was stunned to see that a giant figure suddenly appeared in the clouds and mist in front of him. There was at least one strange bird the size of an adult, with dark red feathers all over his head, and a small coxcomb-like thing on his head. What made Su Zishuang feel horrified was that the strange bird had 3 eyes under his body. The 3 sharp claws glowed with a metallic luster. Su Zishuang had no doubt that those 3 claws could easily hollow out her belly. My life is over. Su Zishuang sighed. At this moment, her adrenaline rose rapidly, her whole body was rushing with cold sweat, and her palms were shaking involuntarily. When encountering this kind of strange bird that is obviously a monster, even an ordinary cultivator may not be its opponent, let alone a mortal like Su Zishuang. The only thing Su Zishuang can count on now is that the strange bird is vegetarian instead of meat. Update time 2013102320:28:56 words, 2023. Although it was still a little far away from Su Zishuang, the strange light flowing in the 3 eyes of that monster bird made Su Zishuang cold all over his body. And during the demon bird's flight, there was a fishy smell all over his body, which made Su Zishuang feel like he wanted to vomit. This is obviously the smell of carrion. This strange bird is definitely not a vegetarian. For an instant, Su Zishuang seemed to see the scene of himself being swallowed by a strange bird. Because the strange bird looks like a tank, with such a physique with a big mouth, it seems easy to swallow a little girl in one bite. Seeing the monster bird getting closer and closer, many thoughts appeared in Su Zishuang's mind among the electric light and flint. But no matter what she does now, it doesn't make any sense. Just when the strange bird was about to approach, Su Zishuang suddenly saw that on his wrist, the crimson star light disappeared, replaced by the purple star lit up. Su Zishuang's eyes revealed a color of surprise. Crimson red represents great bad luck, but purple already represents luck. Sure enough, at the moment the purple star lit up, a huge golden light fell directly from the sky, just hitting the top of the strange bird's head. Caw-caw! Caw-caw! With the extremely clear sound of bone shattering, the strange bird's head collapsed for most of the time, blood mixed with the brain, and 3 eyeballs burst out from the eye sockets. With just one blow, the strange bird was dead. Is very thorough. After a flash of golden light, it dissipated, and then a white jade-like palm grabbed a claw of the strange bird, unexpectedly holding the huge strange bird in his hand. At this time, Su Zishuang finally saw the face of the man who appeared in front of him. Wearing a dark red robe with wide sleeves inlaid with light gold rims, and embroidered with many leaf-like textures on the surface of the robe. This man looks at most 24 or 5 years old, with a pair of delicate faces on his face. Hazel pupils, long black hair pulled up from the golden ring at random behind his head, and there is a leaf-like pale golden texture at the center of his eyebrows. Su Zishuang let out a long breath. Finally, it's here. In the book, because Zi Linger is a female cannon fodder, the story of Zi Linger being rescued in the past is not written in detail, but just a random mention. But one thing is very clear, that is, the man who saved Zi Linger is called Mo Junzi. Among the second-generation disciples of Huangzi sect, the character is the weirdest and most awkward. It is because of Mo Junzi's influence. Later, Zi Linger didn't have the slightest thoughts of righteousness and evil in his heart, and he acted only on his own good. The book describes Mo Junzi as a great moody demon, but at this moment, in Su Zishuang's eyes, Mo Junzi's eyes are as clear as water, and the corners of his lips are smiling, looking at it with interest. Su Zishuang. In fact, in Mo Junzi's eyes, this little girl is indeed very interesting. She is just an ordinary little girl without any spiritual power. Why is she unusually calm when encountering such things? Are you playing a game of peekaboo? But, little girl, it's a bit wrong for you to hide in this kind of place. Mo Junzi's lips raised and said lightly. At this moment, Mo Junzi was standing on a huge black Buddha bead about 3 meters in diameter, while his right hand was holding a golden rod-shaped weapon, and his left hand was holding the corpse of the strange bird upside down, and the blood was still flowing from it. The top of the strange bird's head dripped down, and the overall look was a bit strange and hideous. If an ordinary little girl sees such a scene, the most common reaction is to yell and then pass out smoothly. But Su Zishuang just sat leaning against the cliff, without the slightest fear on his expression. Whether it was a pretentious gesture or not, it was more than a little bit better than ordinary mortal little girls. What's wrong? Su Zishuang stared at Mo Junzi. Mo Junzi's eyes were even more surprised. There were 2 radiances flowing on his hands, and then the weapons and strange birds on his left and right hands had disappeared out of thin air. People who don't know must think what an incredible thing they have encountered, but Su Zishuang knows that the 2 items have entered a black leather bag around Mo Junzi's waist. That leather bag is called the Kyunkan bag. Look at your hungry face with yellow and thin skin just to hide and seek. This behavior is really interesting. Mo Junzi raised his palm, and a string of Buddhist beads appeared in his palm, his fingers gently twirling the beads, his face there was a smile on it. Su Zishuang had already learned about Mo Junzi's demon nature. It was very interesting to see her hungry like this. How could this be like a normal person's thinking? Su Zishuang was about to refute, but found that Mo Junzi turned sideways as if he was about to leave. Help! Su Zishuang immediately yelled with all his restraint relieved of all his strength. Save you? Not interested. Mo Junzi said, then turned into a golden light and disappeared in front of Su Zishuang's eyes. Su Zishuang's eyes turned black for a while. In addition to being hungry, most of them were angry with Mo Junzi. Sooner or later, the devil will be unloaded by the NPC. Su Zishuang gritted his teeth and cursed. After Mo Junzi disappeared, Su Zishuang's vitality was cut off, and she was not afraid of death. She had any scruples. When the curse was dry, his limbs were weak, and his eyes turned black. Su Zishuang could only sit weakly, staring blankly at the steaming clouds in front of him. At this moment, Su Zishuang's brain was blank, and he just said in the book that Mo Junzi saved Zi Linger here, but now Mo Junzi has left, there is no rescue at all, and it is like Mo Junzi. How could the demon save a little mortal girl at will? After all, this is a real world, and it cannot be exactly the same as what is written in the book. Everyone is alive. They are not the kind of puppet-like running tricks. They naturally have their own thoughts and personality. They should not be able to do anything. It's strange. About half an hour later, Su Zishuang was already in a state of waiting to die. But suddenly there was a voice in my ear. Little girl, I was very happy to scold me earlier, I changed my mind. There is still a little maid in the mountains who lacks a little maid who washes, cooks, and does chores, so I will take you back. This is also the price of your scolding me. When Su Zishuang's body tightened, he found that his body had been bound tightly by circles of golden ropes, and then left the nest and flew to the side of the huge Buddha beads, hanging on it like a kite, and Jun Mojiji held the rosary in both hands, her face looked polite, and she was still chanting Amitabha Buddha in her mouth. Update time 2013102520:55:47 words, 2052 Su Zishuang's whole body is warm, even in the strong wind, there is a flow of heat in her body, and her eyesight is not affected by the strong wind, and she can see the scene in the escape light clearly. It may be the function of Pei Yuan Dan. A thought flashed in Su Zishuang's heart, and then he focused on Nangang Yan Xi's body. Nangang Yan Xi hangs her head, her small face is red with cold, her burgundy hair is messy, she is wearing ordinary coarse cloth, sitting on top of the gourd, with her hands on her knees, she is not sociable at all. A humble little girl. Except for Su Zishuang, no one took it seriously. However, from Su Zishuang's point of view, she could see the cold light flowing in Nangang Yan Xi's pupils. Mo Junzi, I didn't expect you to have a habit of abusing mortal little girls. When the light approached, slowly slowed down, and the man in the green shirt standing in the front had his eyes flashing with electricity, with a trace of teasing at the corner of his mouth. This man was wearing a blue scarf and embroidered many cranes on the green robe. With a bronze mirror hanging from his waist, he is no ordinary person at first glance. Chu Qingzu, you will be your babysitter again this year. Mo Junzi didn't answer the question of Zhu Qingzu, the man in the green shirt, but raised his eyebrows. Mo Junzi, your mouth is still so poisonous, but it doesn't make any sense. These are newcomers from my Kunlun school. How many people can your little school receive such qualifications? Zhu Qingzu said. The Kunlun faction is very strong, doesn't mean you are also very strong, no matter how much you say, you are not my defeated opponent. A trace of anger flashed between Zhu Qingzu's eyebrows and eyes, and he waved his sleeves and said, "Hey, I'm too lazy to tell you more." Then, he speeded up, and Huogord moved away at a very fast speed. Su Zishuang had related memories in his mind. What happened to Zhu Qingzu and Mo Junzi before is not clearly written in the book, but there was a hatred between Zhu Qingzu and Mo Junzi back then, and Zhu Qingzu thought he was a disciple of the Kunlun school, so he looked down on Mo Junzi, as a result. In another contest, he was defeated by Mo Junzi, but he was still very unconvinced in his heart. Of course, in the book, Zhu Qingzu is a positive person and will be Nangang Yan Xi's master. Later, Nangang Yan Xi was influenced by Zhu Qingzu and hated Mo Junzi. This is one of the reasons why Mo Junzi finally died in Nangang Yan Xi's hands. Thinking of Mo Junzi's ending in the book, Su Zishuang's heart felt chill again. Calculated by time, in 5 years' time, Mo Junzi will be tricked into the gossip ambush by Nangang Yangzi in Helen Mountain, and will eventually be blasted into a pile of ashes by the power of 8 heavens and earth. Can you change the destiny of Mo Junzi? Su Zishuang asked inwardly. Brother Zixuan didn't escape the fate of being killed by the Wang family in the end, so what about Mo Junzi? Can Su Zishuang change his fate? In 5 years, it is too early to think about so much now. Su Zishuang looked at the distant light from the sky. This was the first time she had met with the heroine Nangang Yan Xi, and this scene was not written at all in the book. And after Nangang Yan Xi enters the Kunlun sect, he will start a life of cultivating immortals, in which it will inevitably be bullied, oppressed, and then rise up to resist and reverse the relevant plot. Su Zishuang is not concerned about what experience Nangang Yan Xi will have when she enters the Kunlun school. What she cares about is where she will go. Little girl, I'm going to speed up, you can do it yourself. Mo Junzi smiled on the corners of her lips, sat on the Buddhist beads, gently pressed his palm down, and immediately released a golden brilliance on the Buddhist beads. Then, the Buddhist beads suddenly rushed to the front. During the high-speed flight, Su Zishuang's hair was blown up, her eyes couldn't be opened at all, and the huge air pressure pressed her chest. After holding on for a while, Su Zishuang's eyes turned black and passed out again. I don't know how long it has passed. Su Zishuang woke up again, and found that she was already lying on the Buddha beads. The sky was dotted with stars, it was night, and she couldn't see the scenery outside. Little girl, it's coming soon. Mo Junzi said lightly. The Buddha beads descended rapidly, and finally entered a mountain forest, stopping in front of a few ordinary houses. The houses are all ordinary blue bricks and black tiles. The inside of the room is dark and lacquered. There is a pool nearby, and there is a bamboo forest in the distance. But in the dark, everything is very unreal. With a wave of Mo Junzi's palm, the golden rope on Su Zishuang quickly broke away, and finally entered the universe bag on his waist, while Su Zishuang's body was taken to the ground. However, Su Zishuang's hands and feet were weak, and he couldn't stand at all. Instead, his whole body fell soft. Can't go? Then let the kitten help you. Mo Junzi said. Kitten? What is that? When Su Zishuang was secretly surprised, suddenly, a strong wind rushed out from the back of the room, and a huge black shadow rushed out. In the darkness, Su Zishuang only saw a monster with a length of 2 meters jumped out. Looking at its outline, it was somewhat similar to a tiger, but the 2 bright green eyes and the single horn curved on the forehead all showed, that is not a tiger. The monster's legs were like copper pillars, and the whole body's muscles were like granite carvings. The sharp teeth exposed in the open mouth of the blood basin made Su Zishuang sweat all over his body. Suddenly, he was frightened. Wherever you can get your strength out, stand up immediately. Don't let the dog bite me. Su Zishuang cried. Mo Junzi's face twitched. The kitten is a dog? Little girl, your eyesight is not good. However, Mo Junzi knew from the bottom of his heart that a little mortal girl who saw a real monster beast was pretty good without crying out of fear. Su Zishuang calmed his mind, stepped back 2 steps, and looked at the monster and said, it is lying on the ground, with its tongue out, just like the big yellow dog next to my house, just a bit bigger. Mo Junzi's face twitched again, and he found that he and a mortal little girl really couldn't tell for a while. Little girl, you will sleep in that room at night, and I will come to see you tomorrow. Mo Junzi waved his sleeve robe, and the wooden door of the house in front was blown by a strong wind. Then he flicked his fingers, and the oil lamp inside immediately turned on, and the dim light illuminates all the cabins. Afterwards, Mo Junzi shook his body and sat on the monster's back. The monster's limbs exerted strength and left like a whirlwind. Su Zishuang pursed her lips, and walked into the room. With so many things happening on this day, even if she had been mentally prepared, she couldn't help being exhausted. Update time 2013102618:08:25 words, 2059. Su Zishuang dragged his tired body into the room. The layout of the room is very simple. It is a black lacquered wooden bed, a wooden table with 1 leg missing, and a few wooden benches. There is a bow hanging on the wall, but the quality should be compared. It was awful. The table was leaning against the wall with an ordinary oil lamp on it. Su Zishuang closed the door and felt a touch of warmth in the small room. For at least 3 years, this will be her new home. Zhilinger's experience in the past 3 years is not written in the book. After the heroine Nangang Yan Xi entered the Kunlun school, Zhilinger, one of the cannon fodder female partners, has no role for the time being. The next time Zhilinger appeared, it was during the exploration of Yunfan Gorge. At that time, she met the heroine and entered the Yunfan Gorge together. At that time, the female protagonist Nangang Yan Xi had cultivated to the 5th level of qi refining in 3 years, and used various means to beat several opponents that he had started at the same time, and through the surface of Mary Suhalo made several elite male disciples infatuated. She was. Next, Zhilinger obtained an ancient miraculous medicine Yujing washing marrow pill from Yunfan Gorge, which was able to change his physique, and also obtained a magic weapon Kisha Ghost Blade and a magic weapon Ice Silver Ring. However, the heroine Nangang Yan Xi and several so-called blue confidants robbed Zhilinger of all the babies who were born into the dead, and left nothing to Zhilinger. Yunfanxia and his party are a trial of outer disciples at Nangang Yangzi. It seems to me that Mo Junzi sent Zhilinger to find an elixir. In fact, it is also a trial. Practice hard in these 3 years. After 3 years, Nangang Yan Xi can no longer take away the chance. Su Zishuang had never thought of taking away Nangang Yan Xi's chance, but why should he give up what belongs to him? In the book, Zhilinger is like a national army transport captain, giving Nangang Yan Xi money, food, and shells for free. Now that Su Zishuang replaced Zhilinger and came to this world, she would never be a transportation captain anymore. Lying on the bed thinking wildly, buried the grief for his brother Zixuan in his heart, and gradually fell asleep. Boom boom. In the early morning, Su Zishuang woke up amid a violent knock on the door. She hurriedly put on the ragged clothes with patches on the outside, then turned over and sat up, but before she opened the door, the wooden door clicked, the bolt was broken by a huge force, and a huge monster was blocking the door, a pair of like copper bell-like green eyes stared at Su Zishuang, and a tongue stuck out from the mouth of the blood basin densely covered with fangs, spraying hot air. Su Zishuang stretched out her hand and held her mouth, restrained the urge to scream, and stared at the monster with big eyes. "Kitten, go aside and let her come out." A light voice came from nearby. The monster named Kitten shook his body, walked to the grass on one side and lay down, squinting his eyes as if he was asleep. "Little girl, what are you doing if you're not coming out yet?" Mo Junzi, who was standing not far from the door, asked. Su Zishuang wanted to come out to salute Mo Junzi, who knew that Mo Junzi would shout at her in such a bad tone. "I have a name, not a little girl." Su Zishuang stepped out, but there was a small mutter in his mouth. A smile flashed across Mo Junzi's white jade-like face. "What's your name?" "Report to uncle, my name is Su Zishuang, thank you for saving my life." Su Zishuang saluted to Mo Junzi, sideways. Mo Junzi instantly became messy in the wind. "Uncle, am I that old? Is it because I haven't shaved recently?" A bronze mirror appeared in Mo Junzi's hand, and he took a look at the mirror. "After taking Zuyin pill, my appearance shouldn't get old." Mo Junzi suddenly put away the bronze mirror, shook his figure, and came to Su Zishuang's side, leaned down and stared at Su Zishuang. "Little girl, remember to call the young master instead of the uncle. As for thanking me, there is no need. Because I brought you back because of the lack of a handy girl." "Yes, master." Su Zishuang hurriedly turned around. If the so-called hero doesn't suffer from immediate losses, and if he doesn't change his words, he might be killed by Mo Junzi. "Go cook." Mo Junzi waved his hand. "Are you really here to do miscellaneous work? It is not written in the book. Isn't it because of Zhilinger's aptitude that she wanted to bring her as a disciple?" Su Zishuang's thoughts turned around, but he was eventually sent into the kitchen. At this time, because of the early morning, Su Zishuang had already seen the general scenery around him clearly. This is a clearing on the mountainside, with dense verdant bamboo forests beside it, a deep blue pool, grassland, piles of rocks, woods, and so on. On the side there is a mountain road leading to the top of the mountain, and it can be seen faintly among the gaps of leaves. Near the top of the mountain, there are cornices sticking out. It is certain that it is a very upscale building. After looking back at the place where he lived, Su Zishuang could only shake his head in his heart. The treatment was too different. Su Zishuang came to the kitchen next door, where all kinds of utensils were readily available. There are also materials such as vegetables and meat, but it is obvious that mortals eat differently. There is a layer of rich spiritual energy on them, and Su Zishuang can vaguely sense some. This is also because this body has the aptitude to cultivate immortality. Su Zishuang's cooking skills have always been very good, so after a period of time, he made a hearty meal. It just so happened that Su Zishuang was hungry, and when he saw the food he had made, his eyes turned green when he smelled the aroma. However, Mo Junzi ate the cooked meals cleanly, leaving no room for Su Zishuang. The taste is not bad, but you have to remember that you can't eat these meals now. After the meal, Mo Junzi's expression eased a lot. After all, he brought a little girl back at will, and he was able to eat delicious food. This was also considered good luck. He threw down 2 thick books and a black porcelain bottle. Take this bottle of medicine first, read the book carefully, and come to see you in a few days. After that, Mo Junzi got up and left for Saran. However, what made Su Zishuang a little depressed was that the monster still stayed on the grass and did not leave with Mo Junzi. Su Zishuang cleaned up the dishes, hungry, and returned to her room. Sitting at the table, Su Zishuang put the black porcelain vase and 2 books on it. With a glance, Su Zishuang almost flashed blind. Xinhua Dictionary Xiaoxian Encyclopedia, Nima, the author, can you cheat more? Mo Junzi was able to throw out such 2 books, such a dazzling name must have nothing to do with him, only the author who should be under the 18th is a ghost. Update time 2013102716:2931 words, 2015. The first thing Su Zishuang did was not to read a book, but to pick up the small black porcelain bottle. On the surface of the small black porcelain bottle is written a few common characters, Pei Yuan Dan. Seeing this name, Su Zishuang remembered that after being rescued by Mo Junzi in the cliff nest yesterday, she took a Pei Yuan Dan in a coma. Later, he was tied to the Buddha beads and blown by the strong wind. It was still warm and comfortable. It should be due to the effect of Pei Yuan Dan. Su Zishuang is hungry now, so he can't wait to open the bottle stopper, pour out a pill exuding a strange fragrance from it, and then stuff it into his mouth. As soon as the pill was taken in, it turned into a cool liquid and poured into the abdomen. Immediately, Su Hanshuang felt warm in his abdomen, and the original hunger disappeared slowly. It's amazing, is this the panacea for immortal cultivators? After solving the problem of hunger, Su Zishuang turned his attention to the 2 books on the desktop, namely Xinhua Dictionary and Xiaoxian Encyclopedia. If it were the original Zilinger, he would definitely not know many words. This was still when he was very young, and his brother Zixuan taught some simple common words, and he could write his own name and some simple words. But now that Su Zishuang's soul is changed, word recognition is no longer a problem. After all, the characters used in this world are ancient Chinese traditional characters on the earth. Although Su Zishuang is not an agent, soldier, scientist, or the like, but an ordinary college student, she is studying Chinese language and literature, so she is naturally very familiar with traditional Chinese. You can not only read words, but also read and write. Next, Su Zishuang began to read these 2 books. At least it is necessary to figure out whether there is any difference between this world and what is written in the author's original work, so as not to make mistakes in time. As the sun sets, there is a slight gust of wind in the mountains, slightly cool. Su Zishuang just closed the book, stretched out, rubbed his jerky eyes, then leaned on the bed, closed his eyes and rested. The so-called Xinhua Dictionary turned out to be a dictionary written by a cultivator named Xinhua Zhenren. It is a very popular dictionary for young cultivators and children. In addition to the basic words used by mortals, there are some very rare words in it. The font that can only be used by the cultivator. Su Zishuang just turned a few pages and put it down. On this day, she mainly read Xiaoxian Encyclopedia, which recorded many aspects of knowledge. The sex, terrain, spirit pills, medicinal materials, monsters, formations, charms, magic weapons, etc. in the immortal world basically have some simple descriptions, otherwise, how can they be called an encyclopedia? But they are just introductions of simple knowledge. If anyone can expect to use this book for cultivation, it will be like fishing for the moon in the water, nothing more. According to the relevant description above, this world is exactly the same as that written in the book. The basic orientation is the same as that of a certain Chinese country on the earth, but it has been expanded many times on this basis. As for whether there are other continents overseas, it is not introduced. And what it is after crossing the snow-capped mountains in the west, it is also not written. Suzishuang's current location is in the Kunlun Mountains. The Kunlun Mountains stretch for millions of miles, and the terrain is extremely complex. In the Kunlun Mountains, human immortals live on the periphery. As for the depths of the inner periphery, there are fierce objects and poisonous gases, and no one dares to go in easily. However, even the periphery of Kunlun Mountain is equally wide. Among them, there are dozens of sects, large and small. The largest sect is called Kunlun sect. In the whole world of cultivation, it belongs to one of the top 5 sects, and it is the decent sect that ordinary cultivators dream of. The heroine Nangang Yan Xi was able to worship the Kunlun sect, even if it was in the form of a crane, it would be envied by ordinary immortal cultivators, and Suzishuang was also very envious. If she could also worship the Kunlun sect, then Nangang Yan Xi was at the same starting point. In this way, her future spiritual realm would not be easily dragged down by her. But now being brought here by Mo Junzi, he didn't even teach the skills of cultivating immortals. He had to wash and cook. It was a fire-burning maid. Who knows when he can start practicing? Suzishuang sighed, opened his eyes and looked out through the window. Roar! It happened that the monster rolled around in the pool, then jumped to the shore and let out a roar that shook its eardrums. The monster called the kitten, in fact, should be called the clear water beast. It is said that there is a trace of ancient beast blood in the body, belonging to the descendants of the beast, and it is very powerful. Kitten shook his huge body, walking along the mountain road like the wind, and quickly disappeared in front of Suzishuang's eyes. Suzishuang just breathed a sigh of relief. In the next few days, Mo Junzi never showed up, but the kitten appeared outside the door in the morning and stayed until the sunset before leaving. Suzishuang wanted to go up the mountain for a stroll, but there was a kitten staying outside, and she did not dare to leave after all. 5 days have passed since the boring days. At noon when it was drizzling, a handsome man with a tarpaulin umbrella, dressed in a light red robe, casually pulled long black hair behind his head, without touching his feet. The earth appeared outside Suzishuang's window. Immediately, he walked in the door, waved his palm, and the tarp umbrella disappeared in front of his eyes. Mo Junzi sat down by the bed and said blankly, "How have you seen it these days? Do you recognize a few words?" Suzishuang wanted to conceal it, but in the past few days, she discovered that after her soul was worn, it might be because of the fusion of the two souls. She has the ability to never forget, a thick encyclopedia of Xiaoxian, it was all in my mind in 5 days. Therefore, after Suzishuang had an excellent reason, she didn't want to pretend. "Return to master, I already know everything." Suzishuang saluted Mo Junzi. It's not weird to say that many people are courteous, so Suzishuang made up his mind to be courteous for a few weeks, and it's better to be low-key. An accident flashed in Mo Junzi's eyes. "Already know all of you? Come and read it." Mo Junzi opened the Xiaoxian encyclopedia and pointed out a paragraph at will. Let Suzishuang read it, but no matter which one he chose, Suzishuang could read it smoothly. Mo Junzi's eyes flickered, and he suddenly reached out and grabbed Suzishuang's wrist. Suzishuang was startled, and immediately felt a heat flow from the position of the wrist, wandering around the body, and then left from the wrist again.